The Nature of Predators, Book 2, Chapter 82. Memory transcription subject, Quana, Jaslip, Soldier. Date Standardized Human Time, February 10th, 2161. Esco's Hope was a Jaslip enclave on the Orchard world, and also the nearest to our prior engagements on the Smiggly homeworld. I couldn't get used to having the Arcs breathing down our necks. My biggest hesitancy was overtaking anything that qualified as food to them. Charisse expected to have a rather incomplete diet, while that French-lipped encroacher, Hyceran, was happy to show her the Yodel and Terran plants that had been brought in case the Casey herbivores were involved. My primate friend was eager to try the alien food, despite how bare bones it was compared to Krev cuisine. My reservations about compromising the values we stood for weren't shared by the human. Regardless, Chief Hunter Kaisel was giving the Orchards an ultimatum: release the Jaslips, or they would be forced to comply. The three-legged, hypersocial aliens weren't a military species, and were likely to surrender to us. The trouble was that the rescued fleet surrounding Psyche might have something to say about us rallying troops from Esco's Hope, for our eventual raid of the Casey's big players. The Krev and their pink avian enforcers were the real enemy. The claws pressed to the Jaslips' necks, pinning us down, and spreading their lies to justify our deaths. What did the Orcs all know about being on the wrong side of oppression, anyway?
So Kaisel talked about asserting control over the enclaves, I snapped at Zephyrus. What does that even mean? Is your plan for us to bow to you? Because I would never.
Operative Zephyrus lashed his tail. If it is as simple as you're wishing for your own world, then we'll see that the Casey species release all of you. Our kind have been prisoners to the SC, locked away. We sympathize. A loud laugh interrupted our conversation as Cherie slapped Hyceran on the shoulder in a fit of hysterics. No, you did not just go there. Did too. So much material on the whole 3 legs. Threes are funny, you know, and an Orchard in a foot race just couldn't reach the finish line. Hyceran cackled in another infuriating pun that I couldn't understand. Please, you must have spent the whole ride over to the side of the galaxy looking for material on all the Casey species. That's a standard for the hunt, Charisse. I never stop thinking of jokes. I like to make others take things less seriously, especially when the jokes about these consortium races write themselves. Elbite, do you have any jokes about us? And I mean, the Tellish, specifically. If there was any good jokes, I was hoping that you would tell us. My blood boiled as Charisse howled and swatted Hyceran playfully with her flimsy hands. She looked so happy ever since that damn cannibal had pranced around wisecracking, with jokes that I was often left out of by virtue of my language. It was like the human was eager to replace me with the latest, greatest thing. The fact that she wasn't brooding or depressed after the Orcs arrived, some random stranger shouldn't have fixed her problems. I'd actually believed that she followed me from the GIB for me, but now I was dirt because I snapped at her once. Interesting. Hyceran annoys you as much as she annoys me, Zephyrus noted. I growled, putting my ears back. Nice observation, how astute. I turned towards the viewport, angling my ears away from Charisse and Hyceran. Our confrontation with the rescued fleet around Psyche was imminent. After Kaisel announced our presence with the JIB's demands, there was no sense concerning myself with things that were much less important than our mission. Just as I had predicted, the militaristic avians were keeping a watchful eye on consortium worlds, in case the Orcs made another move on our behalf. They didn't intend to be embarrassed twice. After the dishonor of getting played at Esco's fighters, the birds had come so close to crushing the Jaslip rebels. The Orcs fleet was comprised of drones, and Kaisel's command ship stayed a ways back. Collective operatives and Jaslip insurgents could board a shuttle to put paws on ground if needed. I wasn't sure if these bloodthirsty menaces would be able to clear the disciplined rescues in open combat. The consortium had an edge in technology, having engineered ships for centuries to face a highly exaggerated threat of the Federation. Perhaps it had always been meant to use against their own people. There was no leaving, not when it would make their control slip. The Krev Consortium will never acquiesce to our demands, even if the Orchards themselves are unwilling to suffer the consequences. The good aspect of the Orchards being hypersocial was that Ulan had been able to craft a phishing email and play on that connected nature. It had gotten ears into basic military chatter around Psyche. Kaisel was hailing the rescues to broadcast his demands, but we could hear their internal dialogue at the same time. On the display feeds, I could see orbital defense platforms revving to life, and the defensive KC fleets bristling with weapons. I had my doubts about this plan. It wasn't subtle. If we couldn't take this planet, though, there was no hope against the real consortium strongholds. We needed more allies than the Greys, but they were all we had. It'd be too much to ask for Sharice's species, the damned humans, to get their hands dirty. Kaisel told us that they wouldn't. I appreciated that they had tried to rescue our species via the OSA project, but that rescue ended the second they found out that we weren't extinct. Even knowing what we were going through, they'd signed a peace treaty with the consortium, without advocating for Jaslib liberty at all. Maybe the Orcs weren't so bad, in comparison to every other indifferent alien. "Release the Jaslibs from under the control of this world's natives at once," Kaisel bellowed, as soon as his hail was accepted. I could echo his sentiment, judging by the itch of a growl that constantly nagged at my chest these days. "Carnivores do not belong to you. Free them, and you will not see us lose them by force." The rescue commander on the screen looked unimpressed. "You declared war on the consortium back on Omnil. If you wish to negotiate, turn back and handle this in a diplomatic way." Diplomacy. I am not the one bumbling sapient coalition. I want results, and I want them now, not waiting an eternity for what scraps you might deign to throw us. My demand is reasonable, and I want only your compliance. I turned my ears to the internal chatter as the avians spoke amongst themselves. The Orchids wished to let them have the Jaslib enclaves. They said they'd be happy to have the trouble out of their ocean front. If those hibernating extremists are so eager to go off on their own without the blanket of our security, let them. However, it's not about that. The consortium was clear that we cannot afford the dishonor of bowing to an invading army, especially after the embarrassment of the Federation's non-existence. Another voice answered, on the line we were eavesdropping on. The Jaslibs refuse to take the civilized route, so we cannot allow them to sow anarchy and make the Rescue army a laughingstock. This is not how things get done. The delegates demand that we destroy this Orcs fleet. That's an order. I respect the hierarchy, but what will the Orchids think? The Orchids will get in line for the good of the whole institution. They, of all species, understand collectivism. While I'm not eager to expand more manpower on these dishonorable insurgents who do not respect the rule of law, we have our orders. In no uncertain terms. When the Jaslibs stop acting like animals, we can reevaluate. Let's not forget who the Orcs are, the most dishonorable of all. That is true. We cannot let them raid Psyche, and we have no guarantees that the Jaslibs will stop gunning for revenge, even if the consortium bends to them. Specify our orders. Eliminate all trespassers and hostiles from the Orchid system. Utilize all weapons at the Rescue Army's disposal, including orbital defense systems that have been transferred to your control. Then help enforce a crackdown on Esquo's Hope Enclave. We are well disciplined and know our tasks. Prepare to fire. My blood boiled as I heard the order that the Krev consortium had passed down, as well as how the Rescue spoke about us inside their own ranks. Jaslibs were mere animals to them, because we had no other option to speak up for ourselves. I didn't even care if Kaiser was going to go out in a blaze of glory here, because we had to give them a lashing they'd remember. If the Jaslib Independence Brigade was doomed despite the outside reinforcements, then it was my new mission in life to take as many of them with us as possible. There wasn't a sympathetic, kind individual in the rescued ranks. The supposedly honorable military existed to keep us down. Clip the hands, I hissed to Zephyrus. They'll never give us freedom. The path forward is only paved with blood. Zephyrus's eyes narrowed, a calculating glint in those vertical slit pupils. If this is how the consortium insists on responding to us, we must teach them a lesson. This is what the Orcs are willing to take a stand for, and the whole galaxy will know it. I waited for the rescued ships to begin firing on us, expecting an all-out battle to erupt around Psyche. Bright, fast, and violent. There was a matter of listening for the ultimate command to fire, and try to use those ears in their ranks to our advantage. That was the one edge we had, despite being outsiders here. I could feel my heart pounding from nerves, as I wished so desperately that we could free this enclave and all the others. Jaslibs deserved at least as much respect as the Tellish. The rescue commander's words were firm. Set drones to fire in 3, 2, Belay that order, another voice squawked, wanted the sound familiar, and carried an authoritative weight. It was the unnamed, no-nonsense register of General Radai, one that I'd heard many times in boot camp. Escort the Arxor ship to the Esco's Hope Enclave, and contest any KC drones that do not heed my command. Only fire on the intruders should they attack or posture to attack the altered civilian populace. General Radai, with all due respect, our prior orders are from the top. It's imperative to defy our dishonorable orders. The Krev, the end elements within our own ranks, have been greedy and deceitful in their handling of the Jaslips. Regardless of how the JIB handles itself, there has been no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, no history of honorable conduct from the KC. They will kill me for this, for disagreeing with them, even I do not defy them. So how much freer are we from their control? Sir, the consortium of other species, who deemed their wishes to be above our own in their hierarchy. I do not agree. Ultimate control of Tenet and her actions belongs to us. We must break off from their direction. We can think for ourselves. There has been enough hiding like cowards to learn of a non-existent threat, and enough lives lost. Rescuts cannot align ourselves with their morals any longer. To all who are loyal to our honor code above all else, and do not wish to stain our species' legacy further with disrepute, stand down, help the Jaslips. I was mystified as the consortium's fleet by and large powered down their weapons and cleared a path. It was obvious that Radai commanded a great deal of respect, and that his reputation was beyond reproach within his own ranks. I began to see why the Rescut delegate had gone into hiding, out of fear that the Casey might terminate him. His people had sheltered him since the Mafani incident, and he had tried to pursue answers over what happened to the kids, so I could see an argument that maybe he cared about our lives. All the same, with how buddy-buddy the avians were with the Krev, I found it hard to believe that Radai's fellows would join his stand. Why would the Rescue General stand with an extremist that I knew he hated so much? Because Radai hates the Krev Consortium more and blames them for pushing us to this. Rescuts aren't capable of seeing the whole truth. They're Krev claw-lickers. Surely the General is the only one whose conscience will win out over being mindless and robotic, following orders like good little soldiers. Allow us to join your ranks, the Rescut on Kaiser's screen replied, in words that were meant to be heard by us. Uncertainty flashed in the pink avian's large eyes. I'm told that we were aiding your efforts to free the Jaslips. We truly did want to save them, not make them our eternal prisoners. The Arxor leader chuckled, eyes gleaming with shrewdness. I'm not sure they'll believe you, but I do. Ulan, do you accept this aid? The Jaslip picked an ear in agreement. If they are finally willing to acknowledge our mistreatment and aid our cause, then I can bury the past for the time being. How liberty comes before all other considerations. I gawked at the viewport, baffled by this sudden, drastic turn of events. The Jaslips finally had an ally who could meet the Krev at their level. The last thing I ever would have expected was for the Rescuts to side with us, based on orders that came from their top general. There was no question that Radai was a marked man after this, and I posited that our independence movement might have just turned into a full civil war. Ulan was right that our freedom was what mattered, but the consortium burning would be a bonus. End of chapter. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.